Previously, on Palace of Mirrors, Captain Bluebeard took Darien on board and began to train him as a member of his crew. Even as Darien felt a pull toward Bluebeard and life on a starship, he knew he could never become a pirate. He told Bluebeard a thin lie about knowing the location of a hidden hoard of treasure. Even though the captain seemed to know that Darien had lied to him, he allowed Darien to lead the ship to that location. With Gent, his only ally on the ship, Darien readied himself to destroy the Kraken once and for all, ending the threat of pirate raids on his home, and maybe even freeing Bluebeard from the prison of his past. And now, Palace of Mirrors, Season 1, Episode 23, All Things Must Fall, Part 1. The tower rose from a plain of shattered buildings. From a distance, the landscape appeared as an image through a cracked pane of glass. It reminded Darien of the way Kathy had described an insect's compound vision, but this wasn't a broken view of a whole thing. The buildings that had once stood here had long since given way to entropy. The ruins Darien had traveled through at night had still resembled a place where people could live. No one could say the same of this place. On the map, it hadn't even been given a name. If it had ever had one, it had been forgotten. Maybe the sword would have been able to tell them. Maybe the sword would have spun a story of this place and the people who had lived there. It lay silent at Bluebeard's side. It held its stories tight. It gave no name to the rubble. Why had this one tower stood for so long when so many others had fallen? Had its architect been more clever than all the others? Had its suppliers brought only the very best concrete and metal and glass? Or had it simply been lucky? Could you even call it luck? Darien wondered. In a way, the tower was like the humans who still survived. It had become a witness to the sad end of a place that had once been, if not ever mighty, at least a place where a person could live a life, a real life, a life free from the bitter cold, the gnawing hunger, and the hard edges that came with those things. Cracks crept like vines up the tower, a promise that someday it too would fall, decay, and turn to dust. Behind the tower, clustered at the feet of the mountains, the lights of the city shone out against the darkness before the dawn. Bluebeard leaned forward, his keen eyes studying the scene. He shifted to Dragon Eye, who sat in a chair to the side of the bridge. The wild-eyed pirate looked back, a bored expression on his face. He looked out at the scene as though he had seen it all before. His normal eye met the captain's gaze, but his mirror eye never wavered from night. Are the skies still clear? A smile, slow as the creep of nightfall, spread on Dragon Eye's face. It ran afoul of the pirate's scars and fractured. He did not look to any screen when he answered. We need fear nothing but ourselves. Bluebeard frowned, but accepted the enigmatic statement. He turned to Darien. The captain drummed his fingers on Knight's pommel, the sound like the music of rain against glass. The sound reminded Darien of the hum he'd heard in the engine room of the crashed ship on the road. There it is. Bluebeard gestured to the tower. You say you found this sword in the upper stories. Darien wiped his sweaty palms on his pants and nodded. I must say, you had wandered quite far from any road. I was very lost. Bluebeard smirked. Very lost, and then, to climb through all this rubble and up into this building. Very foolish, I think. Darien did not reply. What could he say? The story had always been a thin thing, just enough to play this game with the captain. They had reached the end. He had no more elaborations to give, no more embellishments, no more twists or turns. They stared at one another a long moment, but the captain broke first. He looked down at his knotted hands. Darien, his voice came in a rough tumble. I know. I haven't. No matter what happens, no matter what I do, what either of us do. I wanted you to know I respect you. It's not many who would dare push this as far as you have." Darien wanted to tell Bluebeard the feeling wasn't mutual, that he could never respect a killer. He opened his mouth to say as much, but the words wouldn't come. Wasn't Darien a killer as well? Maybe still he would have spoken, would have told the captain he could never respect a slaver. Yet Bluebeard's only eye looked so tired. The skin around it sagged, and veins spidered through the white. Darien saw in that eye a man who had made many mistakes, and a man who felt the weight of them all. "I respect you too," Darien whispered and looked away. Bluebeard gave a curt nod. "Very well." He pointed to the tower. "Take us in. Prepare the docking clamp." Skeleton guided the ship toward the building. The skyscraper grew till it filled the screen. Windows, caked with earth, watched them like rheumy eyes. What ghosts, forgotten and ancient, lurked within? What dreams now lost had they once held close? A boom reverberated through the kraken, and Darien felt for a moment like a little boy huddled in his aunt's lap during a storm. He closed his eyes and cleared the memory away. He couldn't be a boy any longer. Kathy couldn't save him from the storm. He could only weather it on his own. "We have maglock," said Skeleton. "We're grappled onto the upper level of the tower." "Dragon Eye." "Don't you think I would have warned you if any enemy ships were closing in?" He laughed, but any mirth slid off his mere eye as though it were made of ice. "Let's activate the docking laser, cut our way in, and see what this boy has to show us." Captain," Gent stepped forward. "Spitface and I need to make some adjustments in the engine room before I'll feel comfortable leaving the ship parked here." Bluebeard's eye narrowed on him. "Surely you can handle it on your own. You managed just fine before the boy." Darien's breath caught in his chest, but Gent didn't miss a beat. "One way or another, I guess I'll have to manage on my own after all this is finished. But for now we have him. Might as well make use of him, don't you think?" Bluebeard gave a curt nod. "Very well, but be quick about it." Darien followed Gent to the door, but froze a moment at the threshold. Once he crossed out of this room, he knew there would be no turning back. Fear didn't put the hitch in his step. He felt a kind of revulsion to know that he wanted to stay on the ship. He didn't want to leave Bluebeard. He wanted to stay and see the stars. He wanted to hear the stories the old captain would spin, and he wanted to share the stories Kathy had told him. He wanted to believe, against all reason, that if he stayed, he could make things better. His foot fell forward all the same. He fell further and further from the bridge and the captain. He stepped off the lift with Gent, and the bitter air of the underbelly enveloped them. After several turns, Gent stopped and murmured under his breath, "Don't look now, but we're being followed." "Who?" asked Darien. "Couldn't you feel it in the floor?" Gent smiled sharply. "Only a mountain moves like that." Darien's hand tightened on his sword. "What do we do?" he asked. Gent swaggered forward. "We bring this ship down, same as we planned, unless you've come to your senses. I think Bluebeard would still let you live if we turned back now. You make him soft." "No, we won't turn back." Gent straightened his ornate brimmed hat. "No, I didn't think I would be that lucky." They stopped before the engine bay door. It waited, like something alive. It waited, a door to be opened. It waited, a promise of all that would transpire. It waited, the song of the engine nearly humming from the metal. Darien shook his head. It was just a door. He took the wheel in his hands and readied to open it. On this side, he was Spitface and a member of Bluebeard's crew. On the other, he would take back his own name, the name his mother gave him with her dying breath, The name his father cursed, the name Kathy protected and nurtured. Gent drew off his jacket, folded it neatly over his arm, and rested it on the floor. He undid the top 2 buttons of his undershirt and drew his sword. He spun and faced the shadow, just the edge of a smile on his face. "I know you're there. Why don't you just show yourself so we can get this over with?" Twilight soared, the gray of a stony sky, and as broad as his arm, appeared from the darkness at the edge of the hall. The mountain himself followed. "Get out of here, Gent. The captain will deal with you later. I'm to get the boy." His voice fell like a stone from the sky. Gent did not break eye contact with Twilight as he gestured for Darien to continue to the engine room. "This is it, Spitface. I'll hold him off. You take care of the engine." The blood drained from Darien's face, a rush of cold on his cheeks, and a dizzying spin to the room. "Can you handle him?" Gent readied his stance. "I doubt it, but I'd rather face him than do what you're about to do. I'm not sure I'd have the heart to kill the old girl. Get on with it already." He flourished his sword and flashed a killer's smile at Twilight. "What do you say? Shall we see what the man can do against the mountain?" Twilight did not return the smile. "Would you really betray the captain after everything he's done for you?" Gent shrugged. "What can I say? The captain taught me well. I'm a pirate. This is what we do." Twilight sneered. "You know that isn't true. We fight together or we die alone. We're a family. For you to betray him, to betray all of us, for this pathetic outsider, I won't kill you if you stand aside. I'll leave that to the captain. But if you stand in my way, I'm not going to be sorry to gut you right here and right now." Twilight charged, the floor thundering under his massive feet. Darien found himself transfixed by the speed of the pirate's attack. Twilight, even when he proved himself capable of moving quickly, had somehow always seemed to move at a geological pace. Now he moved with the energy of a monster from a nightmare. Sparks sprayed out where the 2 swords met, and Gent staggered back with a grunt. Twilight's frame gave him a clear advantage in reach, forcing Gent to scramble back to stay clear of the edge of Twilight's blade. He dove and rolled, coming to stand several feet back from Twilight. "Go!" His voice held none of its usual banter. He sounded like a man resigned to die. Darien shook himself and turned the wheel on the door. It swung open, and light, white as fresh fallen snow, swept out. The illumination crashed over the combatants, who froze in shock at the resplendence of the engine. Twilight stood over Gent, his sword high in the air. Gent lay on the floor, blood trickling from a swollen lip. His own blade looked as thin as a ribbon compared to the guillotine poised over his head. Darien didn't have time to wonder why the engine was putting off so much light. He and Gent had been slowly lowering the power to it for over a week. It should have been dull, ready for total shut-off. He had to save Gent somehow. The pirate had been his ally for as long as he'd been on the Kraken. Darien fumbled with his sword. Sound dimmed under the hum of the engine, more like a harmonic chant now. Time turned to something viscous, as though the air around them had grown so thick they had to push it aside. Twilight's sword began to fall, too sharp for even time to slow. Gent did not close his eyes or mumble a prayer. He looked his death straight on, and he smiled. At last, so painfully slow, Darien's sword tore loose from its sheath. The guillotine sang in harmony with the engine. Darien began to take a step, but he already felt Gent's loss. He could hear Kathy's rasping breath. Not again! He wanted to scream and rage and weep, but the blade hadn't even come down. Still, it fell. Red sprayed out in a fountain. The drops rose and fell like flower petals in this strange slowness of time that had spilled off the engine with the light. Darien's heart hiccuped in his chest. A sense of deja vu seized Darien and yanked him back to the moment at the top of the ramp leading into the Kraken. Twilight had been there, and Dragon Eye, and the flower petals twisted red in that sickening mirrored eye. Time rushed back, almost faster than before, as though making up for what had been lost. The drops of blood splattered down like summer rain in a dark night. Only now, in the fullness of time, did Darien see the sword stabbing up and out through Twilight's chest. The great man fell to his knees, and there, behind him holding the sword, stood Dragon Eye. Rough laughter tore the hum of the engine and discarded it like a rotten corpse. A flap of skin hung from a wide gash over the mirrored eye on the scarred side of the pirate's face. Thick blood, not quite clotted, caked the crevices of the scars. A grin split his face, looking as out of place as the sword through Twilight's chest. He swatted the big man's hands away when they reached for the sword. Now, not yet. Dragon Eye knelt down, like a parent before a child, and grasped the sides of Twilight's face so that the pirate could not look away from his killer. You'll be dead soon enough, but I thought you might want one last look. His words rasped. You told me my eye lied. You told me you could keep him safe. Do you understand now how foolish you were? Blood trickled from Twilight's lips, where it bubbled with every breath, but he managed to speak. You've never been one of us. I tried to tell the captain, but he believed in you, believed your lies. His voice, once a rumble, had turned to wind. I don't care. Don't have to worry about your lies ever again. Dragon Eye laughed and leaned in close. Go on, then. Be the first mate of wreckage and ruin and corpses. He pulled his sword free, and blood gushed out. Twilight shuddered, like a man lost in a storm, like a man shivering not from the bitter cold, but from the bitter loneliness that comes with the storm. He spasmed, went stiff, and slumped. Spent tears rained from his face and rippled in the blood beneath him. Dragon Eye let him fall with no more reverence than he would have shown a dead rat. The body, diminished and drained, would never be compared to a mountain again. Dragon Eye stood, wiping at his blood-splattered pants, and turned to face them. Gent still lay on the floor not far away. He had watched the scene, for once in his life at a loss for words. Darien stood in the door of the engine room, just a silhouette in the reflection of Dragon Eye's mirrored gaze. His eye caught the light of the engine and became a star nestled in scar. He took a step forward, and Gent scrambled back and up to his feet. What are you doing here? Darien found himself asking. I need you alive. Why? Gent kept his sword between them, though Darien thought it would do little good against the man who had just slaughtered Twilight. Take a nice long look into my eye, and I'll show you. That, and much more. Future and past and the twilight between. When neither Darien nor Gent moved or spoke, he shrugged. Well, I have other things to do, other people to kill. So many people to kill. Some might say too many, but they just don't see as far as I do. He stepped over Twilight's corpse and walked into the deep shadows beyond the engine's light. Just when Darien had finally let out a long, shaking breath, Dragon Eye's voice snaked out of the darkness. When all this is done, bring me what is mine. Darien and Gent exchanged a look. Well, that just happened. Gent went to grab his jacket, but stopped when he realized it had become spattered in blood. Damn it, I had hoped to wear that one off the ship. I'm going to have to leave the rest behind. Darien stared past Gent into the shadows. What do you think he meant by that last bit? Gent shrugged. I don't know. Did you borrow something from him and forget to give it back before scuttling the ship? Darien groaned and shook his head. How can you be making a joke after whatever the shadows that was? Gent raised an eyebrow. How can you be not? He turned toward the engine room. Look, I don't know what Dragon Eye wants. I'd just as soon never find out. What I do know is that we need to get off this ship now. Darien nodded. Yeah, you're right. He moved to step into the engine room, but Gent reached out and grabbed him by the arm. No, you don't understand. We need to just go. Something is wrong here. Just look at the engine. I've never seen it like this. After all our calibrations, it should be ready for shutdown. Instead, it looks as if it swallowed a star and is hungry for more. What does it mean? Gent pulled Darien back from the door. It means something is happening in there, something I don't understand. It means I don't know what happens if we walk into that room, let alone try to take the engine offline. Darien felt a pull from the engine. The light on his skin reminded him of summer mornings when it seemed like the sun might finally break free of the clouds. The plan. Throw the plan out the airlock. I told you before, we can disable the ship 1,000 ways. I can cut 5 wires, and it will be days before they figure out how to fix her. Darien took a deep breath, eyes locked on the engine. Sweat matted his hair and dripped from his chin with the heat that radiated from the room. He wanted to accept Gent's offer. Deep down, whatever attraction he felt from the light, Darien knew that entering the room might very well be his death. No. If I'm doing this, I'm going to do it right. I can't let this ship fly in a day, or a week, or a year, or ever. Gent opened his mouth to argue, but closed it as he looked into Darien's eyes. Instead, he put a hand on Darien's shoulder. Well then, Palace save you. Darien smiled. I thought you didn't believe in the palace. Gent scowled and shrugged. Sometimes it doesn't matter what you believe, damn you. Sometimes what matters is you say the words. I won't go in there with you. I'm many things, but I'm not a fool. You won't be able to shut it down through the console, not the way it is now. You'll have to destroy it physically. Darien took a deep breath. Thank you, he said. Thank you for saving my life. Thank you for helping me. You're a better person than I think you give yourself credit for. If I don't come back, Gent shook his head. Don't talk to me about ifs. I don't have any use for them. Enough talk. Get on with it already. Darien broke free of Gent's grasp, took one final breath, and dove into the light. Searing pain enveloped him, a heat worse than any burn he'd ever felt. He opened his mouth to cry out, but only a hiss escaped. Gritting his teeth, he trudged forward. He thought of Tom, tears mixed with the rain on his face. He could endure this for him. He took another step. He thought of Bluebeard, holding out a sword for Darien to take. It had been the old man's way of protecting him. Darien would sink this ship for him. He could think of no other way to pay the captain back for his kindness. He took another step, and then, just when he could take it no longer, he stepped forward, and the pain abated. He stood before the engine, as he had done so many times before. The light no longer blinded and burned. Cool air brought a chill to his damp skin. Darien spun, to tell Gent he would be okay after all, and gasped. The room stretched impossibly into the distance, as it had the first time Darien entered it. He turned back to the engine, hovering above its dais. They had planned to cut off power to it before destroying it, but Gent had said that would no longer work. Darien drew his sword, but before he could rise it to strike, the surface rippled. An image, Darien sitting at Kathy's bedside the day she died, wavered into view. She lay in the bed, her body thin and frail and weak as it had never been before. She lay in bed, her eyes all that remained of the aunt he had loved. Why did the engine show him that moment? Did it know what he meant to do? Did it seek to make him reconsider? He thought of all the death he had seen since that day. How easy it came. The image shifted to a different woman in bed, a woman Darien did and did not recognize. She had Kathy's chestnut hair, damp and sticking to the sides of her face, but she had Darien's eyes as well. His skin prickled as he leaned toward the vision. In a way, nothing had changed between the two images. It was the same home, the same room, the same bed. Only the woman was different. She held a squalling baby, still covered in amniotic fluid. She looked beautiful, lying on glistening red sheets. Labor had written lines of exhaustion on her face, but she smiled in triumph as she looked down at her child. Tears ran down her face, and sobs racked her body. "Darien, my Darien, let me see who you'll be." She brushed her tears from the baby's forehead. "Just give me a while longer. Just a while longer." The image faded slowly, obscured by the fog of Darien's reflection. Face cold with tears, he bowed his head. He reached for the engine, reached for his mother's face, reached for a moment long past and a woman long dead. He reached, but the image had vanished entirely. He had been wrong, he realized. Death was not easy. His mother had fought it that bitter cold night. She had fought it with everything she had. Darien straightened and dropped his sword into the sheath. Gent would call him mad, but he had a feeling only a madman could do what had to be done here. The engine had the power to bend the very fabric of space and time. A complicated system allowed the ship to harness it to create a tesseract the ship could use to cut across a vast distance. But something so powerful could never be fully understood, never entirely kept under control. Sometimes engineers simply vanished, as though the engine had erased them from existence. Darien had known none of this the first day he touched the engine. He hadn't understood how lucky he had been. Now he knew. Gent had drilled it into him. Eyes wide open, Darien wrapped both hands around the engine. Next episode. In part 2 of the season finale, Darien raises the engine over his head, even as he finds himself thrust through time and space. At last, he confronts Bluebeard. Can he overcome the past to save the old man? Thank you for listening to Palace of Mirrors. If you liked the show, please give it a 5-star rating on your platform of choice and share it with anyone you know who might enjoy it. I truly appreciate your support. This podcast was produced, written, and narrated by Matthew Lindquist, with music by Nature's Eye on Pixabay.